11 months later, the curtains have finally been drawn on one of the most shocking turn of events in Maharashtra's political history. In June last year, Eknath Shinde, then a minister in the Maharashtra government led by Uddhav Thackeray, disappeared with a clutch of MLAs. The events that followed saw Mr. Shinde eventually become Chief Minister, take the name of Shiv Sena as a party and appropriate the political legacy of Mr. Uddhav Thackeray's father, Balasaheb Thackeray. But this entire political drama has more than just two players. There was, of course, Uddhav, a Chief Minister, trying to hold on to his seat, his party, his political legacy. Eknath Shinde, the minister, turning the tables and saying the Sena has been betrayed by an unholy political alliance which was formed soon after the last assembly elections, which saw the NCP, Congress and the Shiv Sena come together. Then there's Devendra Fadnavis, former Chief Minister, BJP leader, who has ended back in power after one brief failed attempt to form government with Ajit Pawar of the NCP. And then there's Bhagat Singh Koshyari, whose actions as governor last June have been found completely illegal by the Supreme Court today, but he will face no consequences. So what has finally happened? The Supreme Court today delivered its verdict in a clutch of petitions that asked it to decide on several factors, including the disqualification of 16 MLAs that broke ranks with the Uddhav-led Shiv Sena last year. The top court had to decide on the role of the speaker in a case like this and the role of the governor. Uddhav's plea was to restore the situation to before his minister broke ranks and split his party as well. So here are some of the key takeaways of what the court decided. It will not disqualify the 16 MLAs who jumped ship from the Shiv Sena, then led by Uddhav, and will leave it to the legislature, as is the law and the constitutional position. That means the current Maharashtra Speaker, Rahul Narvekar, gets to decide on this. This effectively means the Shinde government survives. Eknath Shinde keeps his seat as the Chief Minister. The court was also very clear in saying they can't go back and reinstate Uddhav Thackeray as Chief Minister because he quit. He quit before taking a floor test and he quit himself. But the act of calling a floor test by the then governor, Bhagat Singh Koshyari, was found to be bad in law because 16 MLAs saying they are unhappy isn't enough to test whether a government has the numbers or not when there was no clear threat to the stability of the government. That's not all. The decision by the Shinde camp to then appoint their own chief whip and effectively split the party was also termed illegal by the top court. But when it comes to the role of the Speaker of the House, the Supreme Court has said this will be decided by a larger constitutional bench. So if the acts of the governor were wrong in calling a floor test once 16 MLAs defected, why not restore the situation to what it was before the events of June last year? This is what the court said.
This argument does not account for the fact that Mr. Thackeray did not face the floor test on 30 June 2022 and submitted his resignation. This court cannot quash a resignation that has been submitted voluntarily. Had Mr. Thackeray refrained from resigning from the post of the Chief Minister, this court could have considered the grant of the remedy of reinstating the government headed by him. The order of this court dated 29 June 2022 held that the outcome of the trust vote to be conducted on 30 June 2022 shall be subject to the final outcome of this batch of petitions. Since the trust vote was not held, the question of it being subject to the final outcome of these petitions does not, therefore, arise.
So what does this effectively mean? So what happens at the end of all of this? Uddhav Thackeray gets a victory, but it's a moral victory. Nothing else substantially for him. The Shinde-Fadnavis government is safe till the next assembly election, where, of course, they will, like everyone else who is fighting those elections, face the people. And the actions of Governor Koshyari come into question, but there is no real consequence for him. As far as the politics of Maharashtra go, nothing much changes apart from each side's opportunity to call this a victory of some sorts, which is exactly what they did.
जिन लोगों ने मेरे पार्टी से सब कुछ लिया और गद्दारी की, तो गद्दार लोग मेरे ऊपर अविश्वास लाए और उसका मैं सामना करूं, कैसे हो सकता है? ये तो गद्दार लोग हैं। आज तो कोर्ट ने कहा, और मतलब कोर्ट ने गद्दार नहीं कहा, लेकिन ये सारी बातें हैं। आज तो मतलब महाराष्ट्र में आप सरकार ही नहीं है। नैतिकता तो अभी जैसे मैंने नैतिकता का पालन किया, तो अगर इस मुख्यमंत्री में जरा भी कोई नैतिकता होगी तो मुख्यमंत्री उप मुख्यमंत्री ने इस्तीफा देना चाहिए, जैसे मैंने दिया।
जिनके पास बहुमत नहीं था उन्होंने रिजाइन किया है, और नैतिकता की बात अब करने से पहले अगर करते, जब चुनाव हुआ था, जब शिवसेना भाजपा की सरकार का जब गठित होने मतलब जो सार्वत्रिक चुनाव हुआ, तब लोगों का मैंडेट ध्यान में रखते हुए अगर नैतिकता की बात करते तो शिवसेना बीजेपी का सरकार स्थापित हो जाता था। लेकिन सिर्फ और सिर्फ सत्ता पाने के लिए, कुर्सी पाने के लिए जब निर्णय लिया, ये जनता ने देखा है, महाराष्ट्र ने देखा है, और उसी को सुधारने का काम हम लोगों ने किया है।
नैतिकता की बात करना उद्धव ठाकरे जी को शोभा नहीं देता। मूल रूप से उद्धव जी, आपने नैतिकता के आधार पर इस्तीफा नहीं दिया था, आपने डर के कारण इस्तीफा दिया था, क्योंकि आप जानते थे कि आपके लोग आपको छोड़कर चले गए हैं, आप विश्वास मत प्रस्ताव नहीं जीतेंगे, और एक प्रकार से हारने के बाद शर्मसार होना, इसको टालने के लिए आपने इस्तीफा दिया था। इसलिए नैतिकता की बात मत कीजिए।
जब किसी का इस्तीफा मेरे पास आ गया तो मैं क्या कहता, तुम मत दो इस्तीफा। जब सुप्रीम कोर्ट ने कुछ कह दिया है तो आप लोग का काम है कि सुप्रीम कोर्ट ने सही कहा गलत कहा उस पर व्याख्या करना, विवेचना करना, ये एनालिस्ट का काम है, ये मेरा काम नहीं है।
All right, so what next? What are the implications of this? And is a moral victory really going to count for much? Vishwas Pathak, BJP spokesperson, on the show with me. I'm speaking with Sameer Desai, leader of the Uddhav Thackeray Shiv Sena. Vaibhav Purandare, senior editor of Times of India, with me on the show, and someone who knows Maharashtra politics in and out, Tehseen Poonawala, political analyst, joining me as well. Welcome to all of you, and great to speak with you all today. I'm going to start with Vaibhav, because of course I'll get to the political discussion and what happens next, but please bear with me. I want to understand the implications of this. Vaibhav, you know, usually people would argue that a moral victory means nothing. What is a moral victory? Eknath Shinde is still the Chief Minister. But a moral victory months before the next assembly election can mean something very different. Because even if Uddhav Thackeray became Chief Minister again, if he had not resigned last June and somehow miraculously he became Chief Minister again, it would be for a few months. The real fight is still to come. In that sense, do you think this has helped Mr. Uddhav Thackeray's narrative that he was cheated, he was treated unfairly, and he gets to go to the people with that?
Well, he can certainly use some of the points raised by the Supreme Court as part of his political narrative to indicate that he was wronged by people in his own party, and also that legal and constitutional mechanisms were used in such a way as to topple his government. Because there are two kinds of remarks made by the Supreme Court. One about the role played by Bhagat Singh Koshyari, the then governor of Maharashtra, and the second, the manner in which the chief whip was elected. The court has been very clear that this election of the whip and recognition of the whip by the speaker was not right. So these two things can certainly be taken by Uddhav Thackeray to the voters of Maharashtra in the run-up to the Lok Sabha and the assembly elections. They can also be possibly used by the Mahavikas Aghadi as some sort of glue for the alliance, where you see a lot of differences developing almost on a daily basis now. So the MVA also needs some kind of glue to stick together. It's finding it very, very difficult. And going ahead, it's going to be a major challenge for Uddhav Thackeray to keep his flock together. That is, whatever remains of his flock together. So he will certainly make use of some of these points raised by the Supreme Court. Whether he succeeds or not, we'll see only when the elections come along.
But Vaibhav, at the end of the day, who is the biggest gainer from all of this? Is it Eknath Shinde, whose moves last June have now been legitimized in a sense?
The big winner here is Eknath Shinde, and the big winner here equally is the BJP, because this entire operation was clearly the brainchild of the BJP in Maharashtra, and it has completely succeeded in ensuring that this operation has been pulled off very well, and now it has been legally cleared by the Supreme Court. It was a very difficult case to judge. It is full of constitutional and legal issues, very convoluted and complicated issues. But still, the government has sailed through, and not only has it sailed through, the Supreme Court has actually said that the governor's decision to invite Eknath Shinde to form the government was fully justified, because Uddhav Thackeray had resigned before the trust vote. So there is no way if...
But calling the trust vote was wrong. It's a sequence of events, right? Calling the trust vote was wrong.
Tamanna, now you have to give me a couple of minutes to express my opinion on this matter. The Supreme Court has said that calling the trust vote was absolutely wrong. I think the Supreme Court should not have stopped at that. It should have made clear what else the governor could have done under those delicate circumstances. According to me, what the governor Koshyari did at the time was absolutely correct. It was a completely fair decision to ask for a trust vote, to call a trust vote. It was in fact his constitutional duty to call for a trust vote. So I don't see how this is illegal and bad in law. Okay, when there is political turmoil in a state, when there is a constitutional crisis in a state, when there is complete uncertainty as to whether a government enjoys a majority on the floor of the house or not, when there is uncertainty in the minds of the voters and the populace, it is the governor's duty as a representative of the people of the state to call a floor test, because it is the most transparent way of figuring out whether a government has a majority or not. In fact, he gave he gave equal opportunity to both sides to win on the floor of the house, and it's like sunshine being the best disinfectant. So establishing numbers on the floor of the house is the best way to establish legality of your government. And I think here that I am completely in disagreement with what the Supreme Court has said with regard to the role of the governor in this particular act of calling a trust vote. He was completely justified. He did his duty, and it was the right thing to do.
Okay, so he did his duty as per Vaibhav Purandare. The Supreme Court says no, he shouldn't have called for a trust vote. But once he did, what followed next also becomes part of the basis of why this verdict has come today. And I want to come to Tehseen Poonawalla, because he said this on this show. He has said this time and again that Uddhav Thackeray should not have quit. Tehseen, what else could he have done if not quit? He knew the stage was, stacked against him. The cards were stacked against him. The stage was set. And even today, the Supreme Court says we could have done something if you had not quit. There is no certainty that it would have gone back to whatever was happening before June last year.
Good evening, Tamanna. Thank you so much for having me on the show. And I am very old-fashioned as a political analyst, or perhaps if I ever get into politics. And in politics, like in war, you never ever quit. You fight till your last man or woman standing. So ideally, Uddhav Thackeray ji should have been in the assembly, giving an emotional speech, looking Eknath Shinde in the eye, reminding him of how Bal Thackeray ji brought him up, telling him and the people of Maharashtra how he has been backstabbed. That is politics. Remember the speech Atal Bihari Vajpayee ji gave in the parliament? That is good old-fashioned politics. when you resign on Facebook, that is being woke, and wokeism does not get you victory. It may bring you applause on social media, it may bring you certain amount of likes, but it does not bring you victory. Now the problem out here is that whatever Uddhav Thackeray ji did, it was running away from the battle that was fought. It was running away from the battle that was fought. That's point number one. Point number two, he had not lost the majority because Sunil Prabhu as whip had been removed illegally. That's what the Supreme Court has said. So then, with his whip in place, he would not have lost the floor test because Sunil Prabhu as his whip would have suspended Eknath Shinde and the other MLAs who had gone to Assam for the spa holiday in a spa resort. And therefore, the government would have retained its majority. Point number three, there is one more thing that the Congress needs to learn from this. And I say this for the Congress because I don't want to put any doubts in front of your viewers. I've always voted for the Congress. The Speaker was of the Congress. When Nana Patoli resigned, the Congress could not get their Speaker elected because on a special session call last in 2021 to get a Speaker elected, Ajit Pawar refused or whatever that happened. Had the Congress Speaker been there, this wouldn't have happened. And I have one more question for this government. What was your DGP doing? What was your Home Minister doing, the NCP Home Minister? 15 of your MLAs go away from one state to another and your DGP and your Mumbai Commissioner does not know. They go from the assembly. So all in all, it says a lot about what the NCP did. It says a lot about how the Congress could not get the speaker on. And it says a lot about Uddhav Thackeray ji. He should have been there to fight. Running away from a battle is never the answer. Facebook is never the answer to an assembly.
Sameer Desai, you've heard all of the comments, and I wanted the political participants on the debate to hear all of the comments coming in before I bring you in. Today, this question is being asked time and again. Why did Mr. Thackeray resign? Did he give up too soon?
Tamanna, may I?
Yes, please, Mr. Desai.
Hello. Tamanna, am I audible?
Yes, absolutely. Please go ahead.
Tamanna, okay. Tamanna, at the outset, let me first, on behalf of 140 crore Indians, congratulate and thank the Supreme Court of India, the 5-judge constitutional bench, for giving 2 landmark judgments today, thereby paving a path to ensure that democracy will always prevail in this country. Constitution will be always at the helm in this country. So my sincere gratitude to the Supreme Court of India. That's my first statement. Tamanna, I will not want to go on why did Uddhav ji resign or whether it would have been wise for him to take the floor test, because they are bygones now. And Uddhav ji today said, he has himself given an explanation that that may have been an emotional decision for him. But that is how the family is. That is how Balasaheb Thackeray were. That is how Uddhav ji is. And so I will not wish to comment on that. I believe what is more important today is what is the outcome of today's decision or today's verdict. That I believe is of more relevance. So I, as a political student, would here want to state that, mark my words, this government of Shinde and Fadnavis ji will fall for certain. And I will tell you the outcome of the entire verdict today. And I'll show you how the Sena, the Uddhav Balasaheb Thackeray's stand has been validated by the Supreme Court of India. Tamanna, point number 1. It was Uddhav Balasaheb Thackeray and team that had asked the Supreme Court to refer the Nabam Rabia case to a 7-judge constitutional bench, which was opposed by the government. And today you see the 5 bench judge have accepted this and referred the matter to a 7-judge constitutional bench. So this is victory number 1. Victory number 2 is the Supreme Court has very, very clearly, I will not go into the details of it because the nation has seen, and forget the nation, the world has seen the Supreme Court directing or analyzing these statements or the act of the then governor of Maharashtra. The Supreme Court has very clearly said that calling of the test on the floor was unconstitutional, uncalled for. I believe this is the second victory for Uddhav ji and his Shiv Sena. The third victory, I believe, is cancelling or calling again the appointment of the whip as unconstitutional and bad in taste and bad in law. This again, I strongly believe, is a very strong indication by the Supreme Court that the claim raised by us, the Uddhav Thackeray Shiv Sena, constantly from day one was validated and has held ground.
But, Mr. Desai, may I ask you, what is the point of all of these victories?
Tamanna, I'll tell you, I'm coming to that. Tamanna, now you will ask me, now what have we gained from this? Tamanna, the court, while adhering or raising to the expectations of 140 crore Indians, while making all such remark, has also ensured that the democratic process should carry on uninterrupted. The constitutional authorities should be allowed to perform uninterrupted. And that is the reason why it has left the matter of disqualification of these 16 MLAs to the Speaker of the House, but along with a very strong rider. Now what does this rider says? That in appropriate or suitable time, within time limit, within the stipulated time limit, the Speaker should decide about these 16 MLAs. I want to tell you on record, the Speaker today, Mr. Rahul Narvekar, is an advocate by qualification. I am very, very certain that never in his dreams would he feel or even try to misinterpret the judgment of the court in a matter that would politically suit his political leaders or his political party.
I need to get a response. Yes, sir, I need to get a response. I need to get a response from Mr. Pathak. Mr. Desai has listed 3 victories. 3 victories from this Supreme Court judgment. But today it is the BJP and of course Eknath Shinde who is saying that we are victorious. Our government has been legitimized. Is this a short-lived victory, Mr. Pathak?
Certainly. See, there are 2 issues. One is on ethical ground, what Mr. Uddhav Thackeray is claiming, and other is on the basis of what Supreme Court has concluded today. See, Uddhav Thackeray has been claiming that he is victimized, or he's claiming that he had all the majority and therefore he was to continue in the office of the CM. But look at the facts. In 2019, Shiv Sena and BJP fought together and got absolute majority, and they could have formed the government. That time, Mr. Thackeray betrayed, backstabbed BJP and formed government along with NCP and Indian National Congress. So that was the betrayal. Thereafter, Mr. Eknath Shinde and around 50 MLAs, they have been telling Mr. Thackeray what we are doing is incorrect, and what Mr. Balasaheb Thackeray has taught us, we should go by that thing. And when he was ignoring them consistently, Mr. Eknath Shinde and his 50 MLAs came out and supported BJP to form a new government. When Mr. Uddhav Thackeray realized that he has lost his majority, he resigned. And what is the ethical thing? He had no option but to resign. See, there are 3 instances which he could have really demonstrated. Had it been so, he could have resigned as the Supreme of Shiv Sena, and he could have also resigned as MLC. But he knew that for MLC, he doesn't have to do anything. He can continue for 6 years. But as far as CM is concerned, he would have for sure lost his position. Now coming to the Supreme Court judgment, I urge all the panelists to read it again, if not entire 141 pages, but at least 139, 140 and 141, 3 pages. Supreme Court has categorically mentioned that the Honorable Governor was justified in inviting Eknath Shinde to form the government. So Supreme Court has concluded. Secondly, whatever references are being made about whip and the procedure followed by this speaker, I think I draw to the attention of paragraph D of the conclusion. Supreme Court is borrowing or relying on the statement made by Deputy Secretary of the Assembly. He made that statement that Speaker should have followed a better position. So Supreme Court has not applied in the mind. Supreme Court is only relying on that thing. As far as Speaker position is concerned, whether it is SR Bomai case or whatnot, Supreme Court is always of the view that certain powers are to be exercised by Speaker alone. Supreme Court cannot intervene, and certain powers by the election commission. Yeah.
That you're going into the details of the judgment, but at the end of the day, what is the message coming out of the Supreme Court? That what happened was wrong, but you've gotten away with it because Mr. Uddhav Thackeray gave up before the end of the fight. Let's not go into too much legalese. What are viewers understanding today? जो हुआ गलत है, लेकिन कोई बात नहीं, आपने लड़ाई नहीं की, इसलिए आपकी फेवर में नहीं गया.
No, viewers are very clear. Same Supreme Court in SR Bombay case mentioned that floor of the House is ultimate test, and therefore Honorable Governor has rightly called for floor of the test, and it happened. See, from day one, for last 1 year, 161 MLAs are intact with BJP and Eknath Shinde. So, fact of the matter is that the ultimate objective is whether they have got majority. Yes, they have got majority. So that procedure.
Yeah, but the majority came post facto, didn't it? Tehseen wants to come in. The majority came post facto. First it was 16. First it was 16 and then the numbers kept adding up.
Yes.
No, they were.
No, I remember those sequence of events very clearly. First it was, we don't know where they are. Okay, 1 minute. Yes, Tehseen.
First 16 and then 34.
See, we're going into what the BJP, Mr. Purande, if I may please. Sorry, sorry, Mr. Pathak,
yeah, that
if I may
was Mr.
please.
Desai.
Look,
Yes.
we're going into the area. Sorry, I apologize. We're going into a different realm. Yes, the governor was justified in calling Eknath Shinde ji to form the government. That's correct. That is because Uddhav Thackeray ji resigned. But the decision of the governor to ask for the floor test itself was wrong, because the chief whip was Sunil Prabhu, and had Sunil Prabhu continued to be the chief whip, the Eknath Shinde and the 16 MLAs would be in violation of the whip, the triple whip of the Shiv Sena, and therefore they could not have voted against the Shiv Sena, otherwise they would have lost their membership. See, even today, Eknath Shinde ji is not saying he's formed another party. The BJP is very clever by half. Eknath Shinde says, I am the original Shiv Sena. Now, what was the issue before the Shiv Sena? Which was the original Shiv Sena earlier before the Election Commission? And that chief whip, Supreme Court said, is Sunil Prabhu. Now, Sunil Prabhu's whip was for the Uddhav Thackeray faction. So this faction would have been in violation and thus been suspended. Had they been suspended, the numbers would have been with the MVA. Therefore, yes, Uddhav Thackeray ji resigned. But what happened post facto may be right, because there was no choice. The governor cannot leave a vacuum. So he has to call, or she has to call somebody to form the government. But how was that achieved? That was achieved by illegal means. But because Mr. Uddhav Thackeray did not face a floor test, the Supreme Court could not turn back the clock and reinstate him. And therefore, I go back to the original thing that I said on your show the same night when this happened, that please face the floor. Because had they faced the floor, Eknath Shinde ji would have been in complete violation and the clock would have been turned back.
Can they have turned the clock back? It's basically, Mr. Pathak, the fact that the governor's position has been questioned in court, the fact that the speaker's action is now referred to a larger constitutional bench, does raise a question mark over how the current government was formed, isn't it? Politically, isn't that the message?
See, the very demand of Uddhav Thackeray was to bring status quo ante. And because of the complexities involved, this Supreme Court, this bench, has referred it to larger bench of 7. because there is a question of that Arabia. The larger point is that, see, when the VP is always appointed by the political party, now which was the real political party that was under question, and it was decided by election commission that Eknath Shinde is a political party. Therefore, view of Eknath Shinde was to prevail, and therefore Mr. Narvekar, Speaker, rightly went by that whip and got that protest cleared. I think all these issues is a matter of discussion only. Supreme Court has examined it, and the very fact that Supreme Court has emphasized and concluded that governor was right in appointing Eknath Shinde as a Chief Minister of Maharashtra, that shows that all technicalities can be here and there. However, the fact is that 161 MLAs are with Eknath Shinde and Devendra Fadnavis, and therefore they are enjoying the
But
trust
did they
of the
all
House
come
and trust of
together?
the
Did
state
they?
also.
So is the sequence okay? So important point. Does the sequence of events then not matter? Sameer Desai, I want to get your view on this. If eventually the government is legitimate, what has happened since then is legitimate. So the question mark over whether Governor Koshyari should have called a floor test or not becomes like a footnote, isn't it? Does it matter? Does the sequence of events matter when what eventually happened seems to be fine?
Tamanna, I again reiterate, the Supreme Court has given the Speaker of Maharashtra a chance to make amends, along with a very strong rider that now the judgment of these 16 people, whether to be disqualified or not, should be under the law. And I am very, very certain that in case if the Speaker of Maharashtra decides other way, the Supreme Court will intervene, and mark my words today, mark my words, 16, not alone 16, all 40 of them will get disqualified. Please mark my words. Primarily it will start with 16 and then the rest. Moreover, the government will fall. This government now was in ICU, now is on ventilator. This government will fall.
That's the point right now. Look at the timing.
Symbol,
does this matter?
The name, the party Shiv Sena. It does. Please understand that we are gonna face the elections within the next 1 year. And there is another major court for politicians, and that is the court of the people. The
Frankly,
people
that's the one that matters right
what
now.
all has happened, and now are more. I'm sorry?
I'm saying, frankly, that's the one that matters. I'm going to get Vaibhav to come in. Vaibhav Purandare wants to come in. 1 minute. Yes, Vaibhav Purandare wants to come in.
I want to say one.
Yeah. Tamanna.
The Shiv Sena UBT faction, Uddhav Thackeray faction, will certainly claim moral victory, and its spokesperson is doing that. What was the UBT camp's principal plea in the Supreme Court? It was that the Speaker should not be allowed to decide the disqualification petitions, but the Supreme Court should decide the disqualification petitions. And the Supreme Court has actually rejected that plea and said that there are no extraordinary circumstances for the Supreme Court, for the court to hear those petitions, disqualification petitions, and that there is a mechanism, a constitutional mechanism, a legislative mechanism in the form of the Speaker, which is already in place, and the Speaker should decide that. And they have told the Speaker to decide in a certain time frame, within a certain time frame. They haven't stipulated the exact period, but they have given him a certain time frame. One thing going in favor of the Shiv Sena UBT faction certainly is that they have told the Speaker that you have to take into consideration which is the real political party, because it's the political party that decides who the whip is, and the whip represents the political party, not the legislative party. The question here is that if the Speaker has to do it in keeping with the party constitution of the Shiv Sena UBT, the Speaker has to also take into consideration the fact that the constitution of the Shiv Sena UBT may leave very little room for dissent or for self-expression or for any kind of democratic expression, really. So how making the party constitution...
This is absolutely irrelevant. This is an irrelevant discussion and point.
about making the
Okay,
party
come in, Mr. Desai. Come in,
this
Mr.
is
Desai. Why do you think it's
irrelevant.
irrelevant?
No,
This is
Okay,
absolutely
right.
response from Mr. Desai. Since he's talking about
See,
the
I'll tell you,
constitution of the
Tamanna,
Shiv
again,
Sena
I'll-
UBT, quick response. Quick response from Sameer Desai.
Tamanna,
Yes.
this constitution should have been, this constitution was challenged in the Election Commission of India.
Yes.
In case if the Shiv Sena's constitution and entire
Yes.
Shiv Sena was, the entire constitution of Shiv Sena was flawed and was wrong, then how is it this Shiv Sena was given to Eknath Shinde sir? Now let us not go into it. Let us please understand that a judgment has been delivered, and within a time frame the speaker will have to decide the fate of these 16 MLAs.
one by one,
and
please.
ask any legal luminary, they will say that these 16 members will get disqualified, and post that the rest 24, thereby ensuring
Okay.
that this government will fall by justice also, and even it has already fallen in the eyes of the 12 crore residents of Maharashtra. It has already fallen. And the more time they take, the more blunders they will do, and the more they will fall in the eyes of the people. Mark my words. The party
Okay,
is
so
simple
now
again
that's
will
like a
come back to
prophetic
Uddhav
thing.
Sahab. This is
One
my
year to
concluding
go.
statement.
1 year to go, and we've seen what's happened in 11 months. We've seen what's happened in 11 months. Literally, in the Supreme Court today, there was an attempt to go and stop the clock and reverse time. But all of these events have, gone way ahead of a legal decision. Tehseen, I want to get from you your outlook on what this means politically. Frankly, whether this government survives is now no longer a question mark. Whatever Rahul Narvekar does next will have to be seen. But the key question doesn't remain whether Eknath Shinde will continue as Chief Minister till the next election or not. It's now become what happens in the next election, isn't it?
That's true. But Tamanna, I'm making one more prediction on your show. Rahul Narvekar's decision, which will be subject to the Honorable Supreme Court, will be in favor of Eknath Shinde faction. And that again will be, the whip will be recognized by him by the Eknath Shinde faction, simply because they have the numbers. So in any case, this government is going to last till the elections, and anyone who claims moral victory in politics, there's no moral victory. There is only whether you're in power or not in power. I always say you're either pregnant or not pregnant. You can't be half pregnant. So you either have power or you don't have power. You can't have moral power and nothing else. So let's understand the MVA is not in power. What happens in 2024? That's hypothetical. Their elections will be held. I hope for the sake of the Gathbandhan, the MVA Gathbandhan, they do very well in the Lok Sabha elections and they do extremely well in the assembly elections. But what is the momentum that carries through? That is completely different, because politics changes day in and day out. And that to me will be telling, because there are a lot of micro factors. One last thing, I'm again repeating something everyone is missing. None of this would have happened. None of this would have happened, and the ball would not have been in Rahul Narvekar's court, but would have been in the Congress Speaker's court, which in my opinion would have been an MLA from Pune, who was almost selected to be the Speaker in a 3-day session, had NCP not stopped it. So had you had a speaker sitting there, you wouldn't have had an election for a speaker, and Rahul Narvekar would not be sitting there making that decision. So there are so many mistakes the MVA has made. Now to claim moral victory,
if you're talking about this, if you're talking about this very basic, if you're talking about this very, if you're talking about this very basic MVA mistake, then that's not boding well for them going into the next election together. So then that's a bigger question perhaps for another day.
Can I tell you something on your show? Can I tell you something on your show? Can I tell you something on your show? The speaker was almost decided. He was in Mumbai. The 3-day session was to happen. Yeah, the 3-day session was to happen. Everything was in set. And suddenly they were told in the House, oh, we may not have the numbers. If you don't have the numbers, how do you not have the government? And it was ridiculous, because the minute Anil, the minute the Home Minister was arrested, they immediately got a Dilip Sipati Home Minister.
No point going back in the past. And that's exactly what the Supreme Court has displayed with its verdict today. I remember the first time when constituents of this entire drama moved the Supreme Court, they said, let's decide quickly, otherwise it will be too late. The decision has come 11 months later. It's very well thought out and deliberate. but time and tide and politics waits for no one. So we've galloped ahead to a whole different scenario, and the only thing that Uddhav Thackeray can do today, claim his moral victory and prepare for the next battle. We'll take a very short break. Thank you to all of you for joining us.